This is the Rutmobile. It's not really called a Rutmobile, it's called a rut meter, but it looks more like a Rutmobile, don't you think? Its job is to detect the ruts in the road, and it's really quite clever the way it does it. Underneath this panel, there are 7 ultrasonic transceivers. You can see one right under here. While the vehicle is moving along, the ultrasonic waves bounce to the ground and then back up again. This measures the size of the indentations in the road. The information from the transceivers comes here to the computer system. The operator, who sits next to the driver, has access to all of the information by using this remote control unit. Let's go rut hunting. The Rutmobile does its job without ever losing its place in traffic. It's working now as it drives along the streets of Belfast. Before the Rutmobile came along, the only way to measure ruts was to stop the traffic and do it by hand. This is tedious, time-consuming, and possibly dangerous. The Rutmobile not only detects ruts, it can tell you when each road in the city needs to be repaired. Before we go on, let me give you a lesson in rutology. Don't confuse ruts with potholes. Potholes are holes in the road. Ruts are just a small indentation car tires make after a while.
That's the rut profile as we're moving down the road at about every 2 meters.
This is showing the rut, all the different ruts in the street. The actual size of a rut.
Yeah.
2 meters.
Right, that's about 30 millimeters.
30 millimeters. As well as picking up ruts, you can see all the bumps in the road. The Queen's University designed the Rutmobile in cooperation with the Road Service Division of Northern Ireland. The price tag, about $150,000. Ruts seem like very passive sort of things. Have they ever done anything to anyone, ruts?
Not physically, no. They don't cause grievous bodily harm directly, but if water or things like that happen to settle in a depression such as a rut, it can be very dangerous for traffic. As you can imagine, skidding, things like that can cause a major problem.
Do you have something personal against ruts?
No, potholes are my favourite hate, not ruts.
Well, the next time you find yourself slipping into a rut, who are you going to call? The Rutmobile! Coming up next, the furniture factory run by robotics.
Us lead fairly hectic lives these days, and to meet those changing needs, home furnishings have had to go through a revolutionary change. Just compare this kitchen with those of 50 years ago. This one is light and bright, easy to keep clean. Even the bench tops have changed in height, so they're much easier to work on. They're a good 35 centimetres or 12 inches higher than they used to be. All the bench tops are scratch resistant and heat resistant, and I think this one looks great. But the other impressive thing is that it's very cheap, and it's cheap because you assemble this kitchen yourself. It's all a part of a new wave in design, manufacture and distribution developed here at Ikea in Sweden. This company is to furniture what Colonel Sanders was to chicken. From Jeddah to Jönköping, Wanchai to Sydney, Paris to Reykjavik, this furniture is filling our houses. The cornerstone of the company's success is the production of this, a lavishly produced catalogue in 10 languages with 24 editions each year, and a worldwide distribution of 44 million copies. And it's the production of this catalogue that is bigger than Ben-Hur. In photographic studios thought to be the biggest in Europe, scores of kitchens, bedrooms and living rooms are built to show off each year's range of furniture. Not for this company the casual throwing together of bric-a-brac to compose a nice picture. Handy men and handy women around the world will study these photographs down to the minutest detail, because everything in these shots, including the nuts, bolts, hinges and interior fittings, is sold by Ikea. All prototypes of Ikea furniture are quality controlled. A lifetime of abuse is simulated in a few days of ruthless testing. A wooden child's cot could be lethal if it broke under the strain of a particularly active child. All designs must conform with rigid safety standards. Ever seen chairs collapse under this treatment? Well, if any of these prototypes go into production, they'll have already passed the test and withstood a 70-kilogram weight tilted over 5,000 times. These shelves are supporting the weight of the Encyclopedia Britannica, while simultaneously are straining at the corners. Strain gauges measure the sag in the middle and any structural weakness. Here, a 50-kilogram weight is dropped at least 25,000 times on the seat, while arms and backrests are pummeled 5,000 times. Well, it's a child's paradise in this laboratory, with this wonderful array of machines, all doing what kids and some adults do best: destroy furniture. In this laboratory, we can get away with murder. A bit of coffee here, tomato sauce there, some greasy butter, and some strawberry jam, all evenly spread deep into the grooves of the kitchen table. It's not really designed to destroy furniture, but to arrive at this. This is the Möbel Factor Seal of Approval, which is an objective test of Swedish furniture designed to categorise furniture as suitable for either light use or able to withstand the most relentless activity. "25,000 times, these machines simulate rather vigorous human bouncing. Scenes of this machine, incidentally, were censored from a recent Italian film about furniture design. The Möbel Factor Research Institute also stress tests materials for upholstery and other household products. Wear and tear, colour fastness, light fading, flammability and shrinkage are all methodically calculated. The precision and exactitude applied to these mechanical testing procedures is on a par with testing facilities at Volvo cars. And why not? After all, we keep our furniture 4 times longer than our cars. Once prototype designs pass the Möbel Factor test, independent manufacturers throughout Sweden are contracted to produce the products. Ikea itself does none of the manufacturing. Manufacturers are based close to their raw materials. At this plant, a tree becomes a tabletop in less than a day. Ikea's Almhult warehouse is the most sophisticated in Europe. The sheer volume being handled allows maximum automation. Here there are enough goods to furnish a city with a population of 120,000, and they're moved around, stored, filed and retrieved almost entirely by intelligent machines. During unloading, the cranes automatically select the goods that have been stored the longest. And do you notice anything odd? In storage here are chairs, tables, wardrobes, drawers, cabinets and lamps. But everything is stacked flat. The golden rule is that all Ikea furniture must be designed to pack in flat boxes. That way, storage is cheaper and shipping costs are a fraction of fully assembled furniture. Well, you know, it's a bit like Grand Central Station around here. And to the uninitiated, it could be just a little bit hazardous. Stop. But there are a few safety mechanisms, none of which we've been able to bring into play here. But normally everything proceeds for 9 hours with absolutely no complaints from the robots. And in that time, they can move up to 1,600 pallets in and out every day. Well, we've created so much chaos here, I think we better get out of the place. And just to keep tabs on the global furniture network, predictably there's a computer powerhouse at the heart of the system. Few other furniture empires anywhere could boast this company's computing power. Using Ikea-modified hardware and original software, the company runs a unique international ordering system. Not even the sale of a $2 wall hanging in Wan Chai escapes the attention of this system. And in the store itself, the customer enters a fantasy world where it's possible to be a voyeur and just see how others might live. Pinch ideas from the experts on how to put furniture together and perhaps even find a whole room fully coordinated you'd like to buy. And you can do so in stages as and when the budget allows. From design to delivery, the company is impressively innovative. Perhaps there's a lesson here for industry the world over.
Since the initial development of laser technology, we've witnessed its profound contribution to science and technology. The application of the laser has revolutionized 20th century living and affected progress in a multitude of disciplines, including the arts. In this week's Future Watcher segment, Jeff Rose, inventor of the laser harp, provides us with a glimpse into 21st century music.
Well, I see the future applications of laser technology in the world of music in a number of ways. Firstly, by using larger lasers and hence producing concert-sized laser harps and laser instruments, which would have the beams running out over the audience, perhaps even being able to be touched by the audience, and hence enabling the audience to interact with the music to create various moods in the music and to create changes. This will lead to, obviously, further developments in terms of dancers being able to interact with the beams before they leave the stage, so that one could imagine a situation of an array of beams across the stage, perhaps at low level, perhaps at about knee level. And as a dancer moves amongst the beams, then various parts of music, instrumentations or other sounds could be produced according to the needs and wants of the dancer. This removes the dancer from the restriction of being dependent on a piece of written music or a piece of performed music. It means the dancer is also a musician. In the far future, I can see the extensions of these principles in music as far as domestic use in the home may lead to the situation where one may have a set of laser beams which are connected to an instrument which controls and creates the music that one is listening to. But as one breaks the beams, one constructs the music and conducts it by bringing in and out various aspects of the music. For example, various movements and various crescendos and other kinds of developments of the music will be controlled by the person at home. Future of these things is concerned, the far future, the control systems, I believe, will get much more sophisticated. People are already working with things like eye gazing, which enables people to control things by looking at various aspects. One could imagine a scenario in a living room in the future where there's perhaps a hologram set up of an orchestra, and the orchestra is then looked at by the person making the music, and as they look at different parts of the orchestra and think about those different parts of the orchestra, then those parts come in and out of the piece of music. With greater sophisticated understanding of it, it would be possible for people to create their own music by thinking about it, by thinking and interacting with the system which responds to their thoughts.
Well, thanks to lasers, there's light at the end of the tunnel for those of us who are non-musicians and want to compose and conduct our own music beyond 2000.
After the break, human skin grown in the lab.
Nerve endings are exposed. This is the Birmingham Accident Hospital in England. Not only does it have the largest burns unit in Europe, but it's one of the few places in the world able to grow its own replacement human skin. With ordinary skin grafts, quite large areas of replacement skin have to be taken from the body. With this technique, you only need a piece the size of a postage stamp. Once it's been taken, the skin is cut into even smaller pieces and an enzyme called trypsin is added. Then it's placed in an incubator for about 30 minutes. The live cells settle on a feeder layer, migrate to the space between the flask base and the fibroblasts, and start to divide. The samples are then placed in a centrifuge and the process repeated 6 times. After 10 days, the skin cells are further divided to allow more skin to be grown. These 3 flasks show how quickly the skin grows. In 3 weeks, the surface area has increased by 10,000 to 1. And that's a piece of epidermis after just 3 weeks of growth. And it's extraordinary to realise that only 3 square centimetres of skin was originally taken from the patient. But theoretically, it's possible to reproduce the pieces 10,000 times over, just from that one small original piece of skin. It's only possible to grow the superficial layer of skin, isn't it? The epidermis.
The epidermis.
Does that have disadvantages? I mean, in given time, will it be possible to produce deeper layers of skin?
Well, the dermis is a lot more complex structure than the epidermis. It has been relatively simple once they got over the initial problems with the epidermis to grow sheets that would equate with it. The dermis is a lot more difficult and it is quite expensive. If somebody has perhaps a very small defect, it may in fact be cheaper to inflict pain on them and use their own. It probably will come down to finance.
On the other side of England, at the pathology department of Cambridge University, a different technique for growing skin is being pioneered. This anaesthetised mouse is having skin taken from the tail of another mouse grafted onto its flank.
Well, why from the tail and why a female?
We can tell the difference between a female graft and the male mouse by looking for the bar body in the nucleus of the female cells. We have the grafts already prepared from a cultured cell sheet and mounted on a piece of Vaseline gauze. The grafts themselves take about 2 weeks to grow.
An interesting feature of this technique, which so far hasn't been used on humans, is that the cells usually responsible for the rejection of the foreign tissue are lost during the culture process. So theoretically, anybody may donate skin for culture. When it wakes up, this mouse will have skin attached to its back, which was grown in a test tube.
Thanks to the small but nonetheless very important contribution made by our little friend here, we're probably 2 years away from seeing the establishment of a skin bank in the United Kingdom. But the people who'll benefit first of all won't be burn victims, there's not too many of those, but people with leg ulcers, with moles or birthmarks, and even those who've become slightly disenchanted with their tattoos.
That's there for a reason. Let me think. Oh yeah, I have a dentist appointment at 2:45. But what's the address? I know it's here. It's on one of these. Here it is. If you organize your life with little scraps of paper, computer technology has the alternative. These miniature computers are diaries, address books, calculators, and alarm clocks rolled into pocket-sized units. The liquid crystal display on the day filer gives you the day, date, and time. The schedule allows me to enter up to 40 different events over a 1-year period. I can tie any of these events to the alarm to remind me of my appointment. I didn't need the string after all. The memo pad lets me enter 100 lines of information about absolutely anything. The alarm can ring me at the same time each day if I want. And the day filer can also be used as a calculator. This pocket directory is less expensive than the day filer and lays claim to being the smallest pocket computer in the world. It also doubles as a calculator and stores names, numbers, appointments, and messages. It even has a security code so I can store confidential information. These could mean a major marketing rethink for the string industry. Coming up next, The $1 Million Lake.
It's the Discovery Channel World Celebration Sweepstakes. Watch for details.
That these foods are good for us. Carrots, spinach, broccoli, even pumpkin. But few of us probably realise just how good they could be. All of these foods contain a substance known as beta-carotene. And in reputable scientific establishments all around the world, beta-carotene, which is a source of vitamin A, is currently being examined as a possible preventative of cancer. The problem up to now, though, is in obtaining sufficient commercial concentrations of natural beta-carotene. It's impossible from these products. For example, carrots contain about 30 parts per million of beta-carotene, equivalent to 30 grams per tonne. That means to obtain a kilogram of beta-carotene would require more than 30 tonnes of carrots. The cost would be prohibitive, and just think of the waste. But there's a world demand for beta-carotene. The market is in fact worth $150 million annually and is prepared to pay up to $350 a kilo. Up to now, one company, the giant Swiss pharmaceutical Hoffmann-La Roche, have monopolised that market by producing the substance synthetically. Beta-carotene is a complex molecule of 96 atoms of carbon and hydrogen. To synthesise it chemically is expensive, but for the Swiss company, still a highly profitable concern. And that's a great pity, because here in Australia we're surrounded by the stuff. In fact, I'm soaking in it. This is ordinary seawater, which happens to be the principal habitat for a tiny microorganism known as Dunaliella salina. And under certain conditions, that little algae is nothing less than a factory for producing beta-carotene. On some days of intense sunlight, there's so much beta-carotene being produced here that these salt lakes turn completely pink. These lakes form saltwater estuaries on the upper reaches of the Spencer Gulf in South Australia, just outside the city of Whyalla. And it's here that a dynamic, young Australian company looks set to give Hoffmann-La Roche a run for their money. This new company, Beta-Tene, have found a safe, inexpensive method of extracting beta-carotene from water, without the use of expensive chemical solvents and without using sophisticated technology. So simple is the extraction process that it has now become a closely guarded multi-million-dollar secret. Before the algae is harvested, though, its cultivation is accelerated and multiplied. Certain natural conditions promote its growth, and each day its concentration in several of the lakes covering a 400-hectare site is measured. The algae have two important characteristics which are the key to safely extracting them from the water. They're hydrophobic. That means they hate water, and although they live in it, they just don't get on, just as oil and water don't mix. The algae also have a very thin cell wall, and under certain conditions they produce beta-carotene like it's going out of style. That's what all those dark patches are inside the cell wall. It's a primitive-looking landscape around here. The channel behind me has been carved out to send the water into the processing plant at the rate of about 1 million litres every hour. The water, as you'll notice, has now turned a complete orange in colour. That's due entirely to the beta-carotene content. And scientists believe that the algae is coaxed to synthesise beta-carotene because of two conditions: intense sunlight and very, very high levels of salt. So, laden with its million-dollar payload, the trillions of the tiny organism are sent into the processing plant where they're separated from their watery environment. Even the federal science minister has been refused permission to see this process, as has anyone not directly connected with the company. Beyond 2000 is the first group to be shown the extraction process, although not before signing a secrecy agreement. I was escorted into the facility by Beta-Tene's managing director, Malcolm Taylor. The air inside was sticky, salty, and very humid. Put simply, the plant takes up 1 million litres of orange-coloured water every hour and pumps out 1 million litres of almost clear water at the other end. Along the way, a substance that looks remarkably like carrot juice is siphoned off and sent away for processing. The beta-carotene leaves Whyalla by road and then travels across half the continent to Melbourne. It's transported in these huge containers. They're a bit like giant wine casks, and the emulsion inside contains about 0.5 of 1% beta-carotene. That's about 1,000 times more concentrated than it is in the salt lakes around Whyalla, but still unsuitable for market. It's further concentrated, though, by purification processes that take place in this adjacent room. The emulsion is effectively combined with oil in what looks like a large pressure cooker. The idea is to fix it into a rich oil solution appropriate for transportation. This highly concentrated form of beta-carotene oil is used by the pharmaceutical industry in capsules. Other forms of preparation include a spray-dried powder. So from a common microorganism found in ordinary seawater comes all of these products, via, of course, a fairly unique and efficient extraction process. This is beta-carotene oil, which adds vitamin A and colour to a number of food products, including, of course, margarine. Without the beta-carotene, this is what margarine would look like. And we've just added a few drops of the substance to this, and this, of course, is a far more familiar product to you. This is beta-carotene food supplement, and the Japanese are buying this by the ton. They're using it on their prawn farms, and it gives the prawns an improved colour for marketing and adds a lot of natural nutrients to their diets. It can also be used in other forms of aquaculture too. And of course, the beta-carotene capsules. Eating just one of these a day is equivalent to eating a whole bag of carrots. But the question is it any good for you? In one of the most extensive clinical trials yet undertaken, 22,000 physicians in America are participating in an experiment being conducted by the Harvard Medical School. They're testing whether the consumption of beta-carotene decreases cancer incidence in a healthy population. The trial will run over 4 years and may have far-reaching public health implications. It's possible that a daily dose of beta-carotene could even become prescribed treatment for all people in high cancer risk groups.
Up next, the F-18 Hornet that never leaves the ground.
So far, about 30 pilots have been trained to fly the FA-18 Hornet for the Royal Australian Air Force. It's a fairly costly business to train them in the air, so today much of that training is carried out on the ground, in a simulator. This Hornet isn't going anywhere. It's the full cockpit of the aircraft, mounted on top of a large box full of hydraulics and pneumatic tubes. A lot of commercial simulators for large aircraft like jumbo jets are the aircraft cabs, the cockpit, supported on enormous jacks. This FA-18 cockpit, however, is stuck on the ground. There are no jacks supporting it, but to give the impression that you're flying the aircraft, there are a number of inflatable bladders under the seat, under my backside in fact, and as we go through various maneuvers, the bladders inflate and deflate. Likewise, I'm wearing a G-suit, as I would be if I was flying the real aircraft. It's connected here to an air supply on the aircraft via this tube, and as we go into certain maneuvers, these tubes in the G-suit swell up, thereby restricting the flow of blood down into the legs. Now, in addition to this, there's a number of realistic sounds from the aircraft itself. There's a loudspeaker down here, through which I can hear the note of the engine gradually rising as I open the throttles. I can hear the thump of the undercarriage as the wheels retract and come down again. I can hear the flaps as they go up and come down. All in all, it's a very realistic ride, but we are, of course, still on the ground. Okay, let's fly.
Okay, now put the throttles all the way forward till you feel some sort of pressure to stop you from putting it any further forward. All right.
At 140 knots, we are flying. And this is what would be happening if I were in the real thing. The Hornet can climb to 40,000 feet in about a minute. But your rookie pilot was still having trouble finding the undercarriage lever.
Okay, now put the gear up. Oh, guys, is that it? Okay, push the stick forward, because we're looking.
On the left, the master monitor display. And to the right, a multifunction display. Directly in front of the pilot is the head-up display, so called because the pilot isn't looking down at his instruments, rather they're being displayed in the windscreen ahead of him. And this is what we're looking at now. It shows airspeed in the box at the left, altitude on the right, vertical speed, heading, Mach number, the amount of G pulled, and the angle of attack. The little aeroplane in the center is the velocity vector indicator. You're supposed to keep that on the horizon, but that's sometimes easier said than done. Up in the control room, Squadron Leader Jim Barden can see what I'm doing wrong. On the screen in front of me, he can project most of the military airfields in Australia, as well as Sydney Airport at night, with the city, including Centre Point Tower, on my left. But before I attempt a landing, I do a few involuntary aerobatics, and the G-suit around my midriff and legs blows up like a balloon.
Oh, I'm pulling what? It's 6.8 G there. That was great.
In my headphones, a computer-generated female voice, the pilots call her Pitching Betty, tells me what I'm doing wrong. Engine left, she says, or altitude, or bingo, or fuel low. Meanwhile, the seat is shaking like a yo-yo, and the instruments are going crazy. But finally, I make a shaky landing and manage to get it down. Underneath, the hydraulic actuators are shaking the seat, pneumatic tubes are carrying compressed air to the seat bags and the G-suit, and springs are simulating the effort required to push down on the brakes.
Well, that was just amazingly authentic. I was under the impression that I'd literally flown to Sydney and back in a Hornet. And there's one other advantage, of course, in keeping them on the ground. It's much, much cheaper.
Without the refrigerator, where would we go during the commercial breaks? And where would we grow mold on forgotten leftovers? Chill out with the secret life of machines, next.